working on it. I'm gonna fix that. Okay.
In combination with the Burlington School Committee meeting of November 14th, 2024.
Audio.
The public can also access this meeting via WebEx technology. The Burlington High School Building Committee will hear public comments in person and virtually. Meetings are also broadcast live on Burlington Cable Access TV, and video audio recordings are being made. The meeting of the Burlington High School Building Committee will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in any specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. If you are participating remotely, please identify yourself by typing your name on screen in advance and verbally once you are identified to speak. We request that you please turn on your camera. Comments and statements are limited to 3 minutes. So let's stand for the Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is where I think Gail's here.
And Roger joined.
All right, I will
Mark got
mark
on.
Gail as present now.
Dr. Chen is here too. And Mark.
I got Mark on there.
Okay.
Lisa. I have Lisa, yep.
And Gail.
And Gail, okay. All righty. So we have everything up here. So could I have a motion for the approval of the October 10th, 2024 meeting minutes?
So moved.
Anyone want to second that?
I wasn't here.
The meeting minutes from the 10th.
Second.
Okay. I will go ahead and, any discussion on them? All right, I'll take a vote. Chris Monaco?
Abstain, I wasn't here.
Okay. Ms. Novoychuk?
Yes.
Ms. Massardo?
Abstain.
All right. Dr. Conti?
Yes.
Dr. Chen? Lisa?
Waving hand, thumbs up.
She's thumbs up?
Giving thumbs up on the picture. Yeah.
Mr. Adbato?
Yep. Yep.
Mimi?
For the minutes?
Yes. Okay. Let's see. Nicole?
Abstain.
All right. And Mr. Kuna?
Yes.
And we don't have Neil?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes. Yes.
Tom? Mr. Reagan?
Yes.
Are you buying Stephen or your credit cards?
Ms. Simon?
Yes.
And Mr. Sullivan?
I abstain. I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay, so, and then I am a yes, the chair is a yes. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 yeses. And we have 1, 2, 3 abstentions. So it's 11, 0, 1, 2, 3, just double checking, 3. All right. Invoices and comments for approval. Commitments for approval.
I move that we approve the Dorn Whittier invoice number 12 dated October 24th in the amount of $18,000.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, let's go through this again. Ms. Monaco?
Aye.
And Ms. Wojcik?
Yes.
Ms. Massardo?
Yes.
Dr. Conti?
Yes.
Dr. Chen? Is she a thumbs up? Dr. Chen?
Where is she? So Chris Campbell is calling.
Looks like she's frozen.
Okay, I'll get back to her. Mimi?
He's an SBC.
I apologize.
We're approving the invoices.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Nicole Kasha
Yes.
and Bob Kuna?
Yes.
Neil?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Tom Regan?
Yes.
Martha Simon?
Yes.
Mark Sullivan?
Yes.
Be back to Dr. Chen. Are you still frozen? All right, I'm just gonna, I guess I have to count it as an
passes,
abstention, I don't know. And chair is a yes.
Do we have to have the school committee vote on this?
Oh, yes, so you need to vote, have the school committee vote.
Do we?
Yes, because it's money.
Okay, so Melissa made the motion, and who seconded it?
You did.
I did, oh, yeah. I shouldn't have done that. Can you second it?
I'll second it.
Okay, so members of the school committee that are present, Jeremy's not online, so I'm not going to worry about a roll call. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, 400.
I move that we approve the TAPE invoice number 241005, dated November 4th, 2024, in the amount of $34,901.
Second.
We're going to both do it, or just?
You do it this time. We don't have to go through the whole.
Okay. Any question about this? No? All those in favor of the
Aye.
school committee members?
Aye.
Aye. 400.
Okay. All right.
The eye
Let's
test.
see what she has up there. All right, so budget update?
Yeah, so this is a slide that we include in the monthly reports, and, effectively what it shows is the commitments that we have through either TAP-A or with Dorn Whittier, and what you'll see is that, and it's actually more on Chris's slide before, they are basically coming to the end of PDP in terms of how we budgeted it in their contract, and so, but we're on budget and on schedule based on everything that we've done to date, so there's no real update other than we're on schedule and on budget, and so this is just a reflection of what we include on a monthly report. So.
Thank you. Any want to have questions or comments? All right. Any public comments?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to figure out how to do that. I'm struggling.
Nobody online?
Oh, Millie.
Melly, do you want to,
She
did
said
you,
no.
she's just observing?
She shook her head.
Okay.
No? Okay. Then project update.
Right, so I actually inserted a slide since last time, which is just before Chris gives his update on all of our options, and it's really just to kind of highlight and acknowledge that we're at the end. For those of you that have been on an MSBA job, we have something called PDP. We're ending the end of that, which is where Chris and his team will show you all the options with actual numbers, right? And then the intention and goal of this discussion today, ideally, is to narrow those down. And if we can get there by the end of this meeting, that would be a real accomplishment and goal, which is what we're going to attempt to do. If we don't, then we'll push it out a little bit. But we are at the end of this phase where we are looking to narrow the options down and move into something called PSR, which is the Preferred Schematic Report. And so he's going to go through these options. I don't know if you've dove into some of the numbers, but it's really important that you understand that this is conceptual pricing, right? And what's up on the screen, I'm actually going to read. The cost for the various PDP options indicated in this presentation are intended to be an analysis of the relative cost between options and not a prediction of the actual financial cost of any individual option. And so really we're comparing them against one another. And so there are major variables such as geotechnical, grading, wetland determination, structural systems, MEP systems have yet to be designed, and the cost will vary significantly from the benchmark cost estimating included as part of this PDP cost analysis. In addition, the costs outlined in this report, you're going to see ranges should not be represented as the final construction budget and have a plus or minus 10% degree of accuracy. And the last thing is PDP cost comparisons utilize the estimators. We've gone to a third-party estimator, PM&C, it's fairly standard, and we use square footage data, which I've explained before, in terms of what those costs are, and these guys are working on all high schools and elementary schools in the Commonwealth now, and so in terms of each other, they're being relative to one another, right? And so this is up to date. It's based on square footage, but there's still a ton of things that are going to change these numbers. But right now, I think in relation to one another, they're a very good estimator and flag in the ground to be like, okay, we understand the difference between this and that cost difference. But the numbers could go up or down based on a lot of things, variables that we don't have control over right now. And so I just, out of an abundance of caution, we just like to say this is conceptual pricing. So what I don't want is a number to go into an article that says, oh, this option is that much. That's, and there's healthy range. The ranges that we've put on this is 10% up or down. So that's a pretty good, range, and you'll see it in the numbers. So I don't know if folks have questions about that. Martha?
I was going to ask a question that I think you just answered.
Okay, great.
Because of the wording here. The numbers we're looking at have a 10-degree accuracy, could be 10% more, not 10 degree, 10%. So it could be 10% more than what we see, it could be 10% less, although
Correct.
that's
So
really
when you
unlikely,
look at the numbers.
But let me just finish my
Yep.
statement to see if it's correct. And so it is accurate within, to your best of your knowledge, it's accurate within 10% of these numbers, either up or down. So it's not like they're just relative to each other. They're also grounded in this 20% range, so to
Yes.
speak. Okay,
And
thank you.
when I say the estimator square foot data, so these guys, this is what they do. They look at all new and ad reno options. There are historical costs that they use, and then they price it out. And what we give you here is a much more high-level summary. There is the detail, which is buried in this, right? I'm not saying anything incorrect, correct, Chris? Or is that in there?
Well, we need to double check.
Okay. There is a detailed line-by-line item that we are happy to provide. What we're trying to do here is to kind of come back 10,000 feet and be like, look, this is like when we go buy a house, it's like, well, it's $550,000. Okay, well, does that include the dishwasher? It probably does, right? So we're not trying to outline every single line item, but there is a lot of backup that goes into these numbers.
Right, and you explained, right, that I was trying to save trees. So I said, I'm sure some people like to have it in hard copy so you can flip through and look at it, but we all got one of these so you can look at it and bring it home and
Right.
flip through the pages at home on your computers as well. Because again, these are pretty heavy, but at least they're here, and if you want to look at them after or whatever, please feel free.
Yeah, no, I think having, that is the submission, that's typically what would go to the MSBA. I'm taking one with me. We will end up posting it to the website. We'll absolutely have a copy here. I think maybe we just, if you want the paper copy, maybe we just, Bob, we have like a little sign out so that if somebody has it, we know we can get it back if somebody else wants it. And good luck getting through it. You know? So anyway,
use it as
if
a
there
weight
aren't any
lift.
other questions, I just wanted to get that out there. We feel it's important to make sure people understand where we are in the process, because we are going to be doing estimating exercises as we go through PSR, and then ultimately, when we're building a project, through design development, and then when you get to construction documents, we do estimates at 60, 90, and 100%. So there's a lot of estimating that goes on to kind of drill down into the numbers. This is the first one. Okay?
I have a question that's semi-related, I've asked it before.
Actually, through the chair?
Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Is there an opportunity to revisit the enrollment? This is 1,100, right? And
Correct.
right now, a lot of it is, square footage is based on the enrollment.
Correct.
So I don't know when there's a good time. I'm getting nervous about 1,100 students.
Being too many or too
Yes,
less?
Too many.
Okay.
Point of information, please. I have difficulty hearing, and so far I could hear everybody, but I was having trouble hearing you. If you could put your speakers so that everybody can hear what you're saying, please.
Can't
They
move,
don't want, yeah.
Is she allowed to move the mic, Bob?
Doesn't, I mean, I
I was like, I
can't.
have never heard that before in my life regarding me.
Problem, but I think that it's important, and I know when I'm home, I sometimes have trouble, but the people at home may be having a trouble as well, so.
I wonder if we could get one of our classroom
Okay, but I
things,
think
Dr.
if you talk
Conti, for
into the
future
microphone,
meetings.
Put them closer to you.
There's a classroom thing in here.
A classroom, like
The
the
lightning.
speaker could
yeah.
speak on, but the teachers wear them around their necks.
I'll say it again louder.
I can turn this
Oh,
speaker
okay,
on.
because
Put our-
I think this is really important, and
Yep.
the more of the people can hear it, the better informed and more intelligent our decisions.
No doubt.
Thank you.
So my question is where is a good opportunity to revisit the enrollment? Because that, right now, my understanding is what drives a lot of the cost, and enrollment drives the square footage, which drives the cost. And I don't want us to get too far down the road if, the enrollment we're looking at is like a 20% increase over our current enrollment. And I think we've, over the past few months, been discussing that the enrollment is going down. So I worry about, I think we should do a buffer, but a 20% buffer in terms of cost seems like a lot of money. And if, I just want to know when the right opportunity would be. Like if all things are equal here tonight, I don't need to revisit the enrollment, but when might be a good opportunity?
I'm not sure. I mean, for me, I felt like we'd already talked about that early on, and I understand your concern. Dr. Conti, do you have an opinion on enrollment? I know, like I said, we had a lot of discussion with that when we started the whole project. I think that, I agree, you're saying it's too big of a buffer, but I think we also want to make sure we have enough space for future, growth if we have to as well.
We have the NESDEC projection, which is what we distributed to everybody, and people on this committee added to the NESDEC projection. So
Right.
that's where we came up with the number.
Right.
Am I comfortable with a lower number? I am now. But, if the 50-year life of the building is what you're all planning for, like I said, enrollment does ultimately drive costs, but,
Correct. So the question, I guess,
Is 100 students, 4 classrooms? I mean, we can actually, Terry, we can probably put a price tag on that too at some point, so.
well, that was my next question.
So we could say, what a couple classrooms added would do to the project.
I mean, 10% of 350 million is not a small number.
So that's an interesting way of looking at it. That's not how I would look at it, though.
Okay.
It does come down to, it comes down to a space summary, and Chris, feel free to jump in here. But, having 10% less students doesn't mean you have 10% less building. If from a classroom perspective, we will lose, I think, 4 general classrooms based on how we size them.
Probably.
And so that's going from 36 classrooms down to 32. So that's the biggest change. The footprint of the building will change modestly, I would think. And so I think we should take it as an action to come back with, okay, here's $1 per square foot difference based on enrollment, and try and quantify that, if that's helpful.
Could I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
At this time, exactly what is the enrollment?
9,
8,
No, it's in the
9?
nines.
Oh, all right.
yeah.
Mark, do you have that at the top of your head? Let me go get it.
Millie, could you hear me when I asked that question?
I'm looking it up right now. Hold on one second.
She had asked what the current enrollment is, and we were saying it's in the 9s. We're trying to get a more accurate number. Okay?
Right. Could I do
So we're
this?
we're currently 967.
Because some of you. up here
967,
are
there you go.
Right.
here.
So what do you say,
I
9?
think people just need to
967.
speak up and directly into the mic.
So,
967 is our current enrollment.
967?
And I know you mentioned,
I don't.
yeah, 36 classrooms, and I think we have like 50 classrooms right now with the current enrollment, so just for perspective.
Thank you.
thank you. So I asked that question because I was somebody who, in the summer when this first became an issue, had differed with the majority in thinking that the projection was too high. So I appreciate Melissa's concern that she's raising, and I think we really have to be mindful about this because so many town meeting members do not have children in the school district or whose children have already graduated, and they are facing retirement or are retired on a fixed income, and the numbers are going to really matter. I'm not saying that to say, and therefore we should compromise the integrity of programming or be short-sighted, but I think we should really weigh all of this and make sure we have the most accurate projections here.
Yeah, thank you. And I was going to say, I understand what everyone's saying, but we also have to go back and say that when their children were in school, somebody else was probably in their shoes as well. And if we want to continue to have good schools that are built for the future and can handle, the flux of students going up and down, yes, we need to be mindful of that, but just because you don't have children doesn't mean you get more consideration, than everyone else, because someone else made that sacrifice, years ago and could have, done the same thing. So I get it. I mean, I think we
Yeah.
should get the square footage and make an educated decision with facts, and
Because it's
look at it.
967 jumping to 1,100. How much growth can we reasonably expect over a 100-year period, for example? Are there studies that we can rely on to make those kinds of comparisons or projections?
We look out 10 years, Mimi, and then we're also part of a study because the town is looking at changing the zoning to mixed use over on Mall Road, which would put some housing in there, and they were projecting, looking at the apartment communities and how many students we're getting from the apartment communities to try to model out, and that's sort of a 30 or 40-year plan for the town. So Bob, they were projecting another
70 to 100.
70 to 100 students from potential zoning changes there. I'm not sure if sort of what that's, but those are all sort of educated guesses, I think, at this point.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Monaco, and then I'll get to you, Ms. Simon.
I was thinking of what Dr. Conti just said with the zoning and potential new housing. But there's also this new law about second dwellings on people's property. And it seems to me if we're at 967, having anywhere from 950 to 1,000 could just happen in any given year. I'm more comfortable having the extra 100 as a just in case. I mean, I don't think we want to build a school that's too small, but I can understand the concern that we have no idea what's really going to happen.
Ms. Simon, and then I'll get to you.
Melissa had a
I just want
comment
to clarify
related
because
to the numbers.
this number says 920 that you just put in front of me.
I think there are other students
Oh, okay.
that are here.
Yeah, Mark said
You
967.
said 967.
Right, but Dr. Conti just handed me a number that says 919. So
From
that
October.
But there might be lab,
needed 40 kids.
I think there might be some lab kids, there's lab programming. This is just what we have enrolled in Burlington.
Okay.
Ms. Simon.
I think it's, when we made that decision, we're guessing. But we have information that we're guessing based on. And I think all the comments that have been made, that starting with Melissa's comment that maybe that's too big of a buffer, because we don't want to build bigger than we need. But I think that given that there's already more than 950 in the school, which I didn't know, the new areas being zoned that might have housing. And the other, even more immediate thing, in my mind, that could add to our high school enrollment is that when we have a new high school, I know a lot of people think that more kids have been going out of district, either to the Shawsheen or to private schools. And I think that having a brand-new building that's programmatically and educationally in the 21st century, I think we could get some students who would otherwise go to Shawsheen and such. And we've seen that in Billerica. They built a new high school, and they had fewer kids applying to the Shawsheen and stuff, things like that. So that's another reason that I'm inclined to keep the buffer. But I'm concerned about the cost, and I don't want us to build bigger than we need. But if we're looking at a 50-year building, which I hope it would last at least that long, I'm inclined to lean toward the buffer, leaving it at the 1,100.
So,
Dr. Conti?
Just, this is more not to comment on the enrollment, but on the process piece. I think there's a reason that MSBA has building committees sort of attest to and agree to and sign off an enrollment, because it's only fair to our designer and our OPM that we are working from sort of a foundational agreement. I'm not saying it can't change, but at some point we have to put an educated stake in the ground, or we're asking these guys to do the impossible. So again, I think they can give us some classroom fluctuation. It's not just about the enrollment, it's about the kids' needs within that enrollment. We may need some specialized spaces, we may need some ELL classrooms, so there's also a program that drives space, so there's a lot of different reasons. But what I think is unfair is for us to say 1,100 and then a month from now say 1,000, or then say 1,200, because we'll drive these guys crazy.
I mean, let's look at what they've already done for us, right? And it's like going back and
So again,
redesigning.
Ms. Massardo, we can certainly change it.
That was my question. When do you need the line in the sand?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, we did spend a lot of time going through the numbers, and I feel like there was a lot of thought that went through the 1,100 for all the things that people are saying. In terms of like reducing by, say, 100 students, or frankly, increasing it by 100 students, we're talking in the region of like $3.5 to $5.5 million in savings. So on a building that's brand new, that's $300 million, we're talking about a 1% change right now. And I think where we are in the process, I wouldn't be convinced or compelled to go lower than the 1,100 based on what we know. I mean, I'm just looking at grades 4, 5, 6, and 7 right here, and there's 1,144 kids. So, somebody could say, well, why aren't you doing 1,200? Right. And I think because of the reasons where kids leave, and the historical thing, that the 1,100 is probably appropriate.
I'll just make one more comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just worried that we got in front of town meeting, Dr. Conti, and said enrollment is going down. And so now we're going to get back in front of town meeting, like, well, now we think it's going up, so can we have a little bit of a buffer on the high school? I'm fine with 1,100, given the point. And if the line in the sand has been drawn, I just think we need to be able to back that up.
I think the line in the sand will be at the end of PSR.
Okay.
Would be my
Any
guess.
other questions or comments? Anyone online have a question? Okay, and Chris?
So just looking at these numbers, SP stands for post-grad program, so that gets us to 942, and I don't mean to speak for the high school, but I'm guessing you're missing your night program as well in those numbers that might get to that 967. I had missed this meeting back in April when this was discussed about the 1,100 numbers, so I remember having to go back and look at the notes. But we discussed this as a building committee in April when we started this process and talked anywhere from, I believe, 950 to 1,200, and ultimately settled on the 1,100 as a board with a 5-0 in support of that. So,
Thank you, Chris. Anyone else? Okay. You want to go next?
That guy.
All righty.
Okay.
Let's go.
All right.
Go, Chris, go.
All right, so Terry mentioned a second ago, I'm going to just talk about the PDP binder for 1 second, and then that's printed in front of you. This is a milestone, and I think it's a lot of work in here. There's a lot of stuff written, a lot of, there's executive summaries, there's all kinds of information within this document. It will become available on the project website with one difference from what you have printed here and what's on the digital formats that we gave you is there's some security information in this that will not be on the public website because we don't want that to go out both for this building, how it is right now, some things that we did in our due diligence. And so you are the holders of some information that probably you don't want out in the public in terms of just that security section. So I just want to highlight that. If someone from the general public has a concern of that nature, they can come talk to the administration and go through a process of how to review the security-specific section. But I think that's just for the public safety of the building and the students and faculty that are in here. We don't want that out in the world. So that's the one difference. Everything you're seeing in front of you tonight that's printed on these sheets and on this in the slideshow is in this package as well. And so you'll find that, I believe it should be bookmarked on the electronic version too to help you navigate that digitally a little bit easier. But if there's questions, certainly let us know. The highlight for tonight, what we wanted to talk through is the options at a glance. Really, we have spent at least one or two separate building committee meetings going through strategies and options, all of them. And, I'm assuming as you each individually sit with those and think about them, things might come up or ideas or whatever. But if those are out there, you can let us know that as well. But the real information to add to that conversation tonight would be the idea of an AR, what we've labeled AR9 in the documents. It's not on the options at a glance first page, which is the one was just on the screen, because it came in late to our orbit, and we don't have a site plan for it yet, but it is in the options. It's on the screen right now. And it's essentially the concept of taking over a vacant office building and generating a school program inside of that. Our project team has been to see this building and got files for it and verified that we could fit, it's 111,000 square feet. We can make program work in it, but it's not the size you need for a full school, so we would need to do a sister building to it to get the entire program on this site, which is, all the performing arts or whatever program doesn't fit in the building that's there, you could put as a sister building. And so we studied that option, and that pricing, we did get that through the pricing cost process, the sort of analysis of conceptual models, and that's labeled as AR9. And so that's really that idea, and you can see that on the screen, and I think I'll just let that set there for a second. I don't know if we want to take any questions about this idea or just pause that, shelf it, and then keep going. What do you think's the best there?
So is it possible to do like Google Earth or something so people can see where it is in relation to our current building? Because we kind of...
If you zoom in, Terry,
I know, but it's hard. It's so small, it's hard to see.
Yeah. I don't know how to zoom in.
And so, for me, it really helped when we did the Google Earth thing and could see, I think it was explained to me that it's actually 75 feet closer to the football field than the current building is, even though it's across the street.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to visualize that when it's this big.
And does that include the purchase of that land and building?
These numbers don't include the purchase. You would need to, we specifically excluded that because you don't want to do that conversation in general.
Yep.
You would do that because it's a negotiation. You'd want to take that into an executive session.
I can talk about next steps.
Yeah, if the
Bob.
committee's.
So,
So this cost does not include what?
Does not.
Okay, thank you.
Does not include acquisition cost for this, for the site. Or a process for acquisition either, I should say, because you can't just walk up to a building with a check and buy it. You have to do a whole process with the state, and so that's a process too. But you can see on the screen here, the existing school there, the Burlington High School, and then moving to the east is the building with the with the white on it, and a lot of parking on both sides. And that is the subject property that we went and looked at. It is almost nearly completely empty. Already has one of the, I don't know how far to get into it, one of the interesting facts of this building is that it was purchased, gutted, and the people, the owners that have it right now developed it for a potential biotech or science company to come in. There's a, I'd say world-class science already built out on the 3rd floor that got our minds thinking that this could be actually a really interesting high school. Like, you don't have to build that already. It's just there, and it's like what people would experience in their professional lives in terms of science. And so with that already done, all the infrastructure for that, the science rooms are probably some of the most expensive rooms in a school when you build them, with all of the systems and everything that go into them. And so that was the idea, and so we studied it, and our team has found that it's just as feasible, if not more feasible, than some of the other options we had been studying. So we wanted to make sure you're aware of it.
So the additional part you'd have to build?
Yes.
Where would that be placed?
So we looked at 2 options, and if this becomes something that the committee says, we like this idea, keep studying it, we'll show you some different ideas. The first one we did was on the south side of this option, but it gets really close to the apartments that are there. And so we then decided, well, let's put the addition on the north side.
And so that's the north.
So that you're not affecting any of the apartments or anything like that.
Right,
So that's why we put that, the one you see on the screen when we go back to that is on the north, but we can study multiple different ways to do it.
You're so good, Bob. Thank you. No, it just, like I said, I think it helps people just have a better visual of it. When you think across the street, how far is that? And, I'm sure there'll be questions in regards to the school being across the street. I know I came up with a few when I was talking to Terry about it before, and as far as getting students back and forth safely across the street.
Sure.
Do you build a tunnel? Do you build a bridge? What do you do to make sure that we, keep them safe? And then, like I said, it's just some questions I'm sure people have. I'm going to open it up, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I appreciate the dark horse candidate addition, and I think this is a tricky site. It's been a long waited. Just to put another option on the table, I think is really helpful. This meets every criteria of thinking outside the box, right? The town sorely needs additional space, so to add space and free up space on this site, I think helps everyone. No swing space. I certainly want to learn more. I would really just love to keep this on the table. We have a community meeting coming up. I think I'd love to hear the public's thoughts on this, but I just think it's a good additional option to look at. I drove by to look at it. You come off the highway and it's sitting up there on the hill. I just really can envision a nice Burlington High School sign there. It really could be a flagship for the town versus hiding, the concrete bunker in the woods. So I just thought that was it's a nice spot for it. I second, obviously, the need to build a bridge or get some sort of easement space, et cetera. But I'm curious what this could be.
Right, and something that I had thought about as well was, I think it would probably be a good idea for us to take a tour and see what it's like inside, and set that up for, us or the public, I suppose, too, just to take a peek at it. Like I said, I know there are people who did tour it already, but I think that also will, the more information we have, and like I said, I think it's great that we've come up with another option. I wonder why that wasn't looked at for some of the other building projects that we had going on. I'm surprised it wasn't discovered earlier, so kudos to you all for finding it. But I think to be, to do our due diligence and be fair to the town, I think we need to look at every option so that we can come in with something that makes sense for the students, for the teachers, and that's fiscally responsible, right? So anyone else have any comments or questions on, do you want to talk more about it, or is there any more you want to show? Blow it up a little?
It's really, we have good data for the building. We got actual CAD files, so it's about as good as you can get. And the test fit is real. There's some space in there we didn't fill out yet because it's like small program things, like some meeting rooms or stuff like that. But it's just very promising, and so that's really all I have at the moment, that it just points in the right direction.
So then some of the discussion is that not everything would be over there. There'd still be stuff over here too. It's like, people located over here, and maybe, like, again, we talked about, was it BCAD, and is the, would your office be over here, Dr. Conti, that, is keeping that? So I'm just trying to get
So we have a.
So I'm just trying to get everyone to understand that it's not everything going across the street. So I want to be upfront about that as well. And then, kind of town can start thinking about the future of what's left over here and how we're going to use the space that we're going to keep. So I want to make sure we talk about that.
He's going to introduce another concept option, building on one that we had done previously, but then there's a summary page that goes through kind of each option and highlights really, from a space perspective, what non-ed programs are in any particular option. And with this particular option, as currently constituted, it is assumed that this building stays here and that non-ed programs that are here will stay here. And the future decisions of what the town wants to do with this entire building will be up to the town. So, that could include demolishing some of it to create additional green space. That could be including the district offices here, keeping BCAT, keeping the child care center, keeping the gyms. So that does not, none of that work is assumed in the numbers that are being shown. Just so that we're perfectly clear. It is assumed that that stays here. And that the numbers reflect what is called an ad reno, because there's an existing building and we're adding something to it. So just to be...
Right. Ms. Monaco?
So I went and I drove all around the building. It's a very nice-looking building, and I can see the idea, and I certainly would like to follow it through. I do have some questions in my mind, though. I think the one that jumps out at me the most is having the building on the other side of Cambridge Street. Cambridge Street is a state road. It's not a little walk through a path to get back to this site. And I think one of the biggest concerns I have, aside from safety, is I've been in this town long enough to see buildings left behind and what happens to them, like Wildwood School. And I think if we're going to look at cost, it's only fair to look at not only the cost associated with taking that building and doing whatever with it, but we can't just walk out of this building and assume that the town, we're all the town. So if the town decides to reno this building after we leave it, we're paying for it. So this whole project, in my opinion, would be not only that site across the way, but also whatever we leave behind that has to be changed, updated, modified. Mm-hmm. And that led me to some to some other thoughts about this building and the renovations that we've been looking at. And honestly, I find these things, usually my spatial stuff is great, but I don't know whether I'm up or down on these designs. And I get confused looking at them, trying to figure out what's here now and what would that be, et cetera. But one of the things that's bothering me about this building, if, for instance, if the town could renovate the building after we left it, that kind of tells me that we can renovate the building. You know, if they could do it, we could do it. So that led me to one of my great curiosities about this building renovation, the streets, which we've talked about repeatedly, and how they're too steep. Is there some form of architecture out there, some specialty, some expert in the field of what to do with a situation like that? I mean, how many buildings are there where the slope has been too steep and it's had to be corrected? Can you take out the street and put in a couple of steps, and off to the side put a lift for someone who can't do the steps? Is there a way to take the street, walk along it, go down a step or two, walk along, go down a step or two? You know, I haven't seen anything in any of this where the streets are simply modified and then the building renovated. You know, it's like take out the middle of the building and then you don't have to worry about the streets. Now, I could have missed it because I'm telling you that I'm finding them very confusing. But that's an answer that I would like to have, is if we were just to take this whole building and renovate it a piece at a time, what could we do with those streets to make it work?
That's an R1. Yeah.
And how do you, okay,
So we have to build steps into the system as it goes through. You'd have, I think there's 8 first floors on this building, so every time you go down that, and the problem with this building is those things that you're talking about, like using lifts and stuff, like you would have a lift essentially every like 75 feet, 100 feet, you'd have to like have another lift to go down another 5 feet. And so totally doable, but it's not really, it's just not an ideal scenario. So, but you can't level it, because by the time you get to the end, you're like there's too much distance, and then there's, the incremental steps are too far apart to like really get any good.
No, I understand, but on the other hand, let's say you did do that. The lifts would very rarely be used because there aren't that many people who really need them, but you need them for accessibility. You need to have them there, but for the most part, the usage would probably be minimal.
Well, I guess, yeah, you're right, but
Everybody
if you need
taking the
if you need it once, you got to pay for it, whether it's once or a million times.
Right.
And the follow-on implications of doing that are the same whether you need it once or a million times. So it's really, the conversation is, and I think the highlight that we're trying to say here is that we can get you there and we can do that. We've done it in historic buildings before where it's needed, not of this like length or this size, but if you've renovated a ramp that's too steep for 30 feet, you can do it for 300 feet. It's not rocket science. It's really just, if you look at the red text on this slide and the cost data, that the disruption to doing that project with all of that modification to bring this building up to its code based on the use. And I would say, when you talk about putting other public functions in here, you may be able to slice the building up differently based on how those function, like what's needed for the function. So if you have a bunch of individual parts that kind of attach to something but don't need to be necessarily connected, then you can take out sections and deal with the interlacing parts differently. On this drawing, you'll see the second floor plan. That's actually 3 different second floor plans because they're 3 different levels. And those little diagonal lines that you see, those are like connector ramps that we're trying to introduce so that you can actually get from one second floor to the other while being on the second floor.
Yeah, no,
instead of
I
going
know the
back down.
building well.
Yeah, so those are the like we're showing the things that you have to do to get the building to the place it needs to be. But the question you'll have to ask yourself, are you really willing to go down a $300 to $360 million project with all of that disruption and all of the kids being displaced for all of these years to end up right back here? And so that's the value question, I think.
There isn't any way that you could do a section at a time and keep the rest of the building functional.
No, that's assuming
That's
this. That's what we're
this
assuming.
is.
You can't do it unless you moved everybody out of the building and did it all at once, which is even worse than what we're showing. This is assuming 20 modulars, piece by piece. You're moving kids into a modular, you do a 9-month build, move them back in, do the next section, and you're kind of like moving them around piece by piece. And it's 36 months of construction. That's somebody's entire high school career is moving from modulars to inside to inside.
I understand. So anyway, I guess what I'd like to see a doable reno. I'd also like to see a new building. I'd prefer the new building be on this site because of the campus effect and all being on one side of the street. But I'm certainly willing to look at all the options.
Ms. Simon?
Yeah, just as a thought, based on what you just said, I think you raised some important questions, but I do think that something I've been thinking about is there may be other criteria that we want to consider beyond the building itself, and that, which is things like, does it require swing space? Does it require modulars? And in the renovation, the R1, that's all renovation, that you're saying we should look at it more, and there's no reason not to, but it would require swing space that we don't have. I'm assuming that the cost of that's included in this.
Yes.
Okay. But it is the most expensive of all the options that we're looking at. So to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. My question for any of the renovations or anything that would save any part of this building is that it's like, I've imagined a lot of options over the years as we talked about it, and I've imagined, what if we keep just this part up here and the rest would be demolished later if we build something in another spot, whether it's on this campus or across the street. The HVAC is the problem here, and the boilers are down there, and are all of these different, renovation, add reno options that include, some of them do and some of them don't, different parts of this current building, does it include how do you heat and ventilate the parts we keep? Or is that something that's a separate project later? Can we keep the preschool here if there's no HVAC connected down the hall? So can you talk about sort of how that impacts all of the various options?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me propose that I answer that question, and then we circle back to, I want to get us back to the AR9, the new thing that we wanted to show.
Or we could talk about it.
And then we're going to go back to this sheet, which is going to circle back to a lot of these questions that have been brought back up. So the quick answer is yes.
Okay.
The way we do HVAC now is quite different than when this building was built, and so we can actually kind of modernize and modularize the system so that you don't necessarily have to rely on a boiler plant that's way down the road, So that's the simple, quick answer.
So if you want to get back on track.
Can I just say one more quick thing?
Sure.
In my opinion, as we look at these projects, I think it would be unfair to the town to not look at a resolution with this building as part of the project. If we're going to tear the building down or most of it down or whatever, in my opinion, that's part of the project and part of the cost of the project.
Sure, that's fair, yeah. Yeah, don't just leave it sitting here to,
Yeah, yeah, I mean, like at Fox Hill, we're putting up a new building, we're getting rid of the old one,
Yeah,
you know, like
yeah.
clean sweep.
Yeah,
Let's do it
understood.
right. Yeah.
understood. Okay, so the last new information that we wanted to highlight, and again, we're not really going back into all of the other options on graphic form, but we will talk about them in budget spreadsheet form in just a minute. But the two options on the existing stadium, that's N4 or NC4, NC5A, and NC5B. Those options have a fundamental question that we got into a little bit last time, which is what do we do with the stadium? And so
Do with what?
what do you do with the stadium that they're being built on top of? So this is on top of the existing field down at the corner. I'm trying to be, I want to say football field, but I'm trying to be inclusive to all the sports that are on the field.
Big turf.
So the turf field. So it's
Field where they're playing football on right now.
Currently playing football
Yeah.
today, yes.
and so we had an idea that came up, and so N4, N5, NC4, NC5, they're just versions of the same thing, and I think you could probably mash those together and say there's an option on the football field. We can get through like the shape of it, all of the difference, really the big difference between NC4 and NC5 is going to be the way it engages with Cambridge Street. NC4 kind of faces inward to the site, and NC5 does that as well for the bottom floor, but then as you go up, you actually get to the Cambridge Street side, and you'll see the little graphics on the site plan that show like a plaza on the Cambridge Street side, so it gives some street-facing presence, which is kind of an interesting idea, I think. That's really the big difference. We don't have to get into that right now because you're not trying to choose one or the other at this moment, I don't think, but the big thing is what do we do with the field? So we did a sketch that is this sketch, and the making lemonade out of lemons here is that you have a building that transverses in section to the point brought up about accessibilities down a hill, and at the bottom of the hill, which is the top of this page, is the athletics end of the building, the gyms and locker rooms and all of that. And at the top of the hill is where we're sitting right now, which is mostly non-ed space, or non-high school ed space on the lower floors. And then the second floor is educational space, and then you've got the cafeteria. So I asked our site landscape team, I said, what if we could fit a stadium right between these two buildings at the mid-level, so you kind of walk out of this level and you go down a few feet, and the seats are actually in that embankment. It's a flat field, and then as the flat plane goes out, it actually lands at the floor level of the very end of the building. And so then that can connect into the sports facility and go down, and then underneath that, because we're creating the flat plane going out, you actually get parking, which is the blue line, so you can park underneath that.
Where is Cambridge Street?
Parking under the stadium?
To the right.
Yeah.
So that building on the, sort of the top part,
Driveway would come up like this, and this is the gym.
so just show me where Cambridge Street is.
It's
Not on the
No,
page.
Cambridge Street is
It's up
behind
there.
you. Cambridge Street is down here.
So this is the cafeteria, right here, Chris, cafeteria?
Existing cafeteria?
Existing cafeteria.
Okay.
We are over here, right? And then you would come around the back of the building. This is the gym, the rubber gym, and then the wooden gym. Then you would drive out the street here. Student parking lot is on the left, and then you would take a left and go out the property.
But this is a new build.
No.
Oh, it's not.
New build is on
The new building's on the
football
Build
on the
a new
football
building
field,
on the
current
field.
football
So
field.
this is, yeah.
This is where they're building the
happens to
new.
the football field.
For the
Okay.
two options that are building on the existing field, the football field, we had a problem that what are we doing with this football field because we're displacing it.
Okay,
And
so
so
you
we
put it-
said,
You put it with the library.
once you move the high school out and you get that program down there with a brand-new building,
Up there.
over there,
Somewhere.
then you open up a whole bunch of building, and to your point, you're like, well, let's not even do a project of not addressing this building. And so we tried to address this building with saying, we can give you a brand-new field. And like, when this eureka moment happened, I was like, that field
That's good.
is like college level, like, this is a prize for the Burlington community, to have a field like that with, a whole athletic center attached to it.
Right.
You have this end of the building can be all of the community-facing components, and you get a new high school that's built without modulars, without phasing. You do have to figure out where to play the field sports for 2+ years, but I think you have other field options in town. So I think that this one, and we were able to get those buildings on the field outside of the wetland stuff, which is a major constraint on this site. So we just thought you should see this. And so NC4, NC5A, and 5B have consideration financially in them for this. And so we wanted to make sure you saw that.
I like that one.
Yeah, and I know,
Porta potties?
well, I was just going to say that's been a big concern and complaint, is the bathrooms, that there aren't bathrooms really down by that field. And, I mean, this does kind of, I'm hoping we would
We're going to get the
accommodate
we're going to get
that
the trailer
here, but-
ones that have the flowers in
yeah,
them.
something nicer.
Now
than
that I
porta
know
potties.
where I am.
Yeah, but it does help to, like you're saying with Bob, you pointing where outward, because
Yeah.
again, it's not three-dimensional. It's hard to always envision when you're looking at something flat like this. I mean, I know you live and
Yeah,
breathe
well,
by this,
yeah.
but a lot of us don't. And so I was just saying,
Yeah, I had
that's
no
why I
idea we
needed
were
to have
talking about right here.
the Google Earth and.
Yeah, I appreciate the comment. We'll figure out a way to make that a little bit more
Or
graphic.
maybe just mark, again, just mark it better so you can
I'm
say.
the only one willing to admit that I can't.
That's right.
I
you're-
still had a dotted line, the snowflake was always a dotted line. So you could always kind of see the old building.
Right. Did you have something
Yes,
else?
can you help me understand the parking? So this is raised,
My next question, too.
and you park beneath it?
How many parking spots
No,
underneath?
the gym is the lowest, this is the middle ground, and then you
You're
come
parking
up
on
to
the
here.
field?
Under the field.
That's what I don't understand.
So the field, so the site is,
Okay.
you have gain of almost 20 feet.
Okay.
From this level down to the bottom level down there, and so, and then there's
covered
actually a
parking in the
lower
winter.
level below
Okay.
most of this building in that area, so you've already got it dug out. And so we thought, we can come out of this building, go down a few feet, create a flat plane, it'll be structured, about half the field will end up being like a structured component that creates levelness.
Okay.
And then you can park underneath that, and so it adds parking for field events or even
How
the
many
use of
spots?
this.
Do you know?
I think it says on
Approximately.
there, does it say?
I like that.
And you get indoor, like winter parking? I mean, yeah, come on, people.
We, at this phase, we're schematic, so we could probably push and pull on the number of spots, but I think the concept idea of this is what we wanted to propose, so.
This plan, the student parking lot,
So
would
this
stay where
part
it
would
is.
be on.
Student parking lot stays where it is, there's actually, if you, Terry, do you have NC4 or 5A? So there's actually parking at the building itself too, for the high school. And then you've got all the parking behind here, over there.
Over here.
That's at this building currently, and you would have parking underneath. So it would be in a substantial add of parking spaces, so.
There's actually enough space between this wing of the building and the lower wing of the building to put a football field?
That's to scale.
That's it, right there.
Wow. I'm impressed.
Catherine, I have a question. Is VCAT included in NC4, NC5?
It would be here in this,
Okay.
They're
in
already
this
there.
building,
That's
yeah.
how we moved.
Okay.
But the difference between NC5A and 5B is that we heard from this group that maybe there's non-ed space, and let's use this as our transition to go to the actual spreadsheet.
Okay.
That maybe there does need to be some non-high school spaces in and adjacent with the actual high school program. So when you're looking at this spreadsheet, and it's small on the screen, but you have it printed out, if you go to the third column, you'll see the non-high school square footage on there. And you can track down that column because we wanted you to see that the difference between some of these options, and they're not all square footage size exactly the same. That's partially a byproduct of when you're kind of sculpting and scalpeling this building out, you end up with what's left over or what makes sense to keep in terms of the space that isn't dedicated for high school or taken up by the high school program. And so some of that's leftovers. We can plus or minus that, but it's just, again, at this phase, every square foot you add to the building is about $900 to $1,000, right? So you do the math. You tell us to add 5,000 extra square feet for some non-high school education space, that's gonna be, what, $5 million? So, like, that's how the money marks start ticking up on this project. And so you can see in the third column from the left, we're identifying for each option the amount of non-high school education space that we've assumed are included in that, and that can be adjusted if you like the idea and you're like, we like it, but we want more X in it. That's something we can do during the PSR level, and you'll see the numbers change because of that conversation and discussion. But just because we were just talking about NC 4, 5A, and 5B, the difference in the back page, the second page, the difference between 5A and 5B is that one includes a substantial amount of non-high school space and one doesn't. And so it's essentially almost a whole nother floor added to that 5B versus 5A. And you can see to the right, at the very right-hand side, the implications for the cost. So that's really the exercise we wanted to highlight there, is that you have options on the non-high school space that goes with you to whatever high school project you want to do. And I think that this committee, all along the way, will be having to decide what's in, what's out. And hopefully we come up with a project like NC4 or NC5A. I'm not trying to tell you that's what you should pick, but that we can do everything and still come up with a logical solution for this building that makes sense, that keeps something and keeps all the programs functioning and doesn't create a situation where the town has to deal with something later. So these numbers, I'll go back, the phasing requirement, this is the second column.
Can I ask a question about the third column?
Yes, go ahead, yes.
Thank you. So if we just look at the N1, the new builds, does not include, and then the next one says all the high school programs remain in the existing.
Non-high school.
Non-high school programs remain in the existing building. Isn't that the same thing? And what, that's what I understand.
They kind of are. It's just saying two different things.
So 4 says you're going to build new, in the new building space for non-school stuff. But isn't N1 and N2 the same thing?
They are, but they're different. They're different.
Okay,
And let me describe that for you.
Yeah.
The N1 is an option that was looking at everything that is required for a high school being built in that zone. That's the zone of the existing student lot. And you remember we have some really major wetland constraints right there. And so the shape of the building is really not traditional for a high school building, but we're trying to do something here inside of the wetlands where we can. There is, side note, currently, I think tonight, a conversation at Conservation Commission on doing what's called an ANRAD, which is basically everybody coming to an agreement on exactly what the wetlands are. Our engineers are there right now having that conversation. It's not anything to get too worked up about, but that's happening tangentially to this, so that if you said, we really like this, I'm say, great, I think it's feasible, but we still have to like weave this thing in, or have some major conversations about replication of wetlands and stuff like that, right? Which will drive cost up. But the difference between 1 and 2 here is that this is taking a look at a high school and saying, what, for just the high school program, we took out all non-high school space, can we get that to fit in this spot? And that's N1. So you're relying on this building, this existing building, to carry the weight for the non-high school education spaces. N2 was saying, well, what if we did that same idea, but we pulled out some of the major spaces, like the stuff that actually works well for you right now, the gyms, the auditorium, some of the music spaces, and position this new building in a way that was so adjacent to the existing building that you can just kind of walk back and forth between them, which means you're building less space, saving more here, doing some mild renovations, but there's some major drawbacks to that. And it's a long, skinny building with just sort of core classroom components to it, and all the special stuff is over in this building. And that would be a value proposition that this committee and your town would have to wrestle with, is that, do we really want our kids doing that?
So that's a two-building option, really?
That's kind of a two-building option,
Okay.
yeah. And so that's the difference between N1 and N2. And yeah, on the non-high school square footage column, we could have written those the same way, but I think we chose not to because we wanted to highlight that one really kind of is different than the other. So, should I keep going? Okay. The phasing side, the phasing column is where you're going to find us talking about where swing space is required in particular. I think until you get down into the new options, in particular the ones that are on the football field, or the AR9, which is the one across the street, every option has some bit of phasing to it. But not all options have swing space. And so that's something you need to really think about. And just like this committee last time said, a project that's going to last 4 years, I think that was kind of the benchmark, or whatever is the time frame. We don't want anything to do with that. This committee may say, for example, we don't want a project where we have to move kids in and out of modulars for 3 years. Or we don't want to have to put modulars on a site, and so any project that has that, let's take that off the table to help us kind of narrow. I'm just telling you things you can talk about, so we tried to be very clear about what we think the phasing and modular requirements are for swing space, and that's what the phasing column is. The duration, again, is looking at conceptually what it would take to get a project done. I think that these are you probably won't do better than this on a lot of these, but there's a lot of decisions that can affect the timeline of a project. And so this is us looking at it from 30,000 feet, and then there's a lot of decisions along the way that can maybe make that a little bit faster or maybe a little bit slower. And then you see the total calculations for gross, GSF stands for gross square footage. And then you see the column that says, it's abbreviation, we probably could write the full word, but it's construction cost. This is escalated and projected out according to the timelines that we had in the duration number. Just to familiarize you, escalation is a number that you put on for every year that goes by. And so these construction numbers are based on today's dollars, but all of this construction won't even start happening until 2026 or 7, somewhere in there. And so we have to take the today's dollars and escalate it out to when it actually would happen. And that's, prior years to now, that was really difficult. I think it's getting better and leveling. So we're able to see better now what that's going to be, or have more confidence in it than we had for the last few. And then when you go from construction cost to project cost, all these notes are also at the top of the page, cut off in the slides, but on the page you have in front of you, all of this is up there too. But the difference between construction cost and project cost is a 25% soft cost. If you hear us say that's all the fixtures, furnishings, equipment, engineering fees, architecture fees, OPM fees, contingencies, stuff like that, that's not direct construction or trade construction going into the project, loose technology, stuff like that. So that's what gets you from construction to project. And again, we have the backup that gave us actually a pretty pointed number, but then Doran Whittier and Tape went and said, we're not going to be able to guarantee that number at this point, so let's give it a 10% a 10% cone, the way I like to visualize that sometimes is when you see weather forecasts showing a hurricane, they tell you, here's the track, but it could be anywhere like that, right? And the further you're away from it, the bigger the cone is. The closer you get to it, the smaller the cone gets. So as we get through this process, you'll see that cone start narrowing in tighter and tighter until we actually get to a number that will tell you is the number, and that's the number we'll hold. And so that's how this sheet works. And I just, I think with that, I think we really will go where the chair would like to go in terms of conversation on this, on what we're showing, so.
Okay. Chris?
So I don't think we're there yet, but I just want to confirm, this wouldn't include any potential rebates that could potentially happen as the process goes on with green energy or any of this? This is just where we're at now? Okay.
Yep.
Melissa had her hand up.
The other Chris, and then I'll get over here.
I just wanted to know if the stadium you showed us in the library, is the cost of that included in?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, for in, where the options that it applies to, so in 4, in 5A and 5B is what that stadium option applies to, and it is in there.
Okay, and when all the questions are answered, when you get a chance, I wasn't at the last meeting, so could we just take a look at those buildings on the football field?
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
I just had a question about the phasing. A lot of these have the con of phasing, so I get the con of swing space, but is there, like, I was looking and I was like, okay, well, that seems a major con, so maybe we eliminate those, but then it was like, I'll have to eliminate all of them. So is there any, it sounds like any ad reno is gonna have some aspect of phasing. Is that just like, is there a trajectory of phasing that is not addressed in the swing space phasing?
What do you mean trajectory?
Are you asking like maybe which one's less disruptive?
Yeah, like they all say
Right.
con of phasing. So like, is that just an overall con of ad reno in general, or is there, like,
Yes.
can we? So,
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yes, that's why we wrote that, is that
You
a
nailed it.
con, phasing is a con almost every way you look at it.
Okay.
It's disruptive, it's socially hard. Operations of a school and construction are not symbiotic relationships, since you have to work really hard at it. It's a con for cost. It does drive up the cost of the project because they have to do fits and starts and do all that stuff, and I don't know if Eric has more to add to that.
No, it's terribly disruptive. It's brutal from an educational perspective. And Terry, sledgehammer, 10 to 15 modulars for 3 or 4 years is...
It
It's
goes-
terrible.
Yeah, it goes
I
back
mean,
to,
I'm
yeah,
saying
how would
it's a
you
chunk
like
of
that,
money that
your
we give
student to
back.
have
So
that
all
experience?
money
Right.
doesn't go into the building. It
But
goes
even
into-
some of the ones that say phasing, that
Yeah.
don't require modular, say phasing. So
Correct.
that's just a comparative against a new building, not against all the ad renos phasing. All the ad renos
Yeah.
without modulars, phasing is equal.
Yes.
So
Okay.
the different options that they show with those ad renos include an element of demolition and new build
Yes.
within the confines of the existing space. That's the best way I can describe it. So there are going to be fences and cutoffs throughout the building, depending on where they are during construction, which will literally be attached to the building. So think of when someone is building their house and they're like, oh, I want to make it bigger. And you see the guys all working and they put a foundation on, but they're still living there, and you're like, oh, that can't be fun. And it's not. I mean, I've lived it, I've witnessed it, Mike's witnessed it, these guys have witnessed it. It's a very difficult process for everybody, for the designers, for the school staff, for the students. It just is really, really challenging, and sometimes it makes sense. With this building, we certainly question whether or not there's a better option. That's, and I, you know, when Chris showed us the new build on the field with the concept of a stadium within these buildings and keeping that, yeah, piqued my interest for sure. And then literally at the same time, through Chris and Eric and myself working with the owner over there, seeing that option, was like, wow, that's interesting too. And so I think we do have some really good options. I think if, and I'm not going to put words in Chris's mouth, but, renovating this entire space the way you wanted to, one will be the most expensive option by a long way. It will look from all intents and purposes from the outside very similar, right? And the amount of disruption will be enormous from a phasing perspective.
Question? Go ahead.
I would like to move that we eliminate AR3 and AR7, since I don't see any extreme benefit, and all I've heard is that we don't want to do modulars.
I'll second that.
And R1.
Well, I feel like
we still want to look at
Monica
that.
wanted to leave R1 on the table for now, but.
All right, so
I
you
think
seconded, right, but no, you go ahead.
I was going to say, it might be worthwhile, and I know we didn't do this last time and I got thwarted, but if we are legitimately in a position, and if we're not sure, we can say we're not sure, but if we're going to eliminate options at this stage, I would like to go line by line.
Right.
That's why he has this fancy column at the end that says advance. And so if it gets a check, it goes into the PSR phase.
Okay, can I?
Hold on one second. I want, Chris Monaco had a question, and then I'm going to go back to you, and then I'll go over to you, Chris. So go ahead, Chris.
Well, I just wanted to clarify the degree of disruption with, if we do a new build on either the student parking lot or varsity field. The high school would just remain as is until the building was moved into ready, right?
In terms of facility, yeah. In 1 and in 2, create a logistic challenge.
Which ones do?
In 1 and in 2 that's on the student lot right now.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So, but yeah, operations in this building would remain untouched.
Right. If we build on the student parking lot, the kids are screwed. I have a granddaughter that will be all over that.
So what I will say, though, Chris, and Chris Blesson mentioned this earlier, is that, the symbiotic relationship of a construction project and a school, there are still going to be issues when we're over there, but they're much more manageable. Working with administration, the OPM and the builder and the architect, like those are very, very manageable because they're distinct separate sites. And you look ahead and you constantly are planning for what the impact of construction is going to be on the school, on any operations, and we figure it out.
One other question. This, what you showed us with the football stadium and the library, which is where I picture it, is that a brand-new, did you just come up with that, like, since the last meeting, or did I miss it at the last meeting?
Yeah, we didn't, it had just popped into my mind probably like that day.
That day, yeah.
And I needed to get the actual landscape, because I was like you, I was like,
is it going to fit?
It's not going to fit. And then we had a conversation, and I like sketched on a screen. I was like, maybe it'll fit. So then I had them do, the landscape architects who do the layout of the football fields. I said, do it to scale, because I'm not, like, if we present this and then we end up being like, oh, we're like 20 feet short, like, I'm not going to do that. So,
right.
So they did it, and we proved the concept. And so then I was like, I needed to get a sanity check from your OPM to make sure, it's like,
Did he pass?
And so, and so.
He's the wrong guy to get us.
I get that, yeah.
But yes, I think it's new to you. It's still new to this process, but we've been chewing on it long enough to feel very confident in presenting it to you
What I
tonight.
really like about that is it addresses this building. It doesn't leave it behind to get run down and all the other things that happen when you move out of buildings.
Right. I think you had a question and you had one too, so I'm going to go with Chris and then Melissa, and then it looks like you do, Martha. Okay, so Chris.
Looking at the new constructions with the fields, that's going to mean roughly no varsity field for 4 years, I'm going to guess?
Yeah.
Okay. And then that would also have financial implications because town meeting last time didn't go for updating the middle school field. So we're going to need to do that at some point in this process. It's at end of life, but in relatively good condition. But if we're going to basically be moving, I'm guessing that's where our football field might be moving towards. We'd want to be looking at updates to that as well in this process, so we're not completely having away games for 4 years.
Yeah, I think you guys could tell us,
Yeah, we can schedule.
carry the cost for, yeah.
And there will be, Chris, there will be some tangential costs because you'll be busing sometimes. You know, it's the nature of the beast, but I will tell you, having had a son never have a home football game, the fact that you potentially could have home football games is wonderful. You know?
We just have to fix the field sooner
You know, we're
rather
looking
than
at
later.
roughly 5 million plus. I think it was 2 million to just resurface from last time, but, you know, we'd have to put in more money there to upgrade that field, which I don't think, at the end of the day, anyone would disagree because of the equity of our varsity sports. But it was just something to point out because that will definitely come up.
Right. Melissa.
So to Terry's point, I am 100% in favor of reducing options. I'm not positive that I understand the nuance right now between like AR 1, 2, and 8. But Chris, you mentioned something like N1 and 2 are basically one option, N4 and 5 are basically one option. So could we move forward with saying a new build on the football field, a new build on the parking lot, one ad reno? You know what I mean? Like, are those, are we good to get it down to like that level, or?
Well, again, I think let's go through each one like we were talking about, and so we can address each one at a time, and, you know, again, ones that are similar, like you were talking
I'm
about.
not ready to address AR 1, 2, or 8
Well, you can,
individually, right?
I think the
them
exercise
off.
here is, we have the advanced column, which means you're
Oh,
taking it to
advance it.
PSR, and so we'll go line by line, and then you can, if someone says, I would like to see that advanced, and you know, and then at the end, you adopt this document as the record of your
Okay.
conversation.
Right, and we can,
Yeah.
you know, we can put a question mark, I assume, and put table 1, you know, if we're not, we can't make up our mind, and Martha, unless you want to
sorry,
comment on
Martha.
her comment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's reasonable to say, if we agree, that having the modulars, the AR3 and AR7 are not something I think we want to do. There are other disruptions with phasing, but those two are different. And I'd be happy to not have to go through them again, but we can go through them all in order, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we've already had the motions on those two, and we've had some discussion, so, but I still think we should go through each one and mark it as, you know, A or no, or,
It's a check mark or
Question
an
mark.
X.
Make one
Yes,
one
Jen.
more comment. I mean, I think, you know, the PSR phase, basically, we do a deep dive on any options that we bring through. And so the fewer options that we have, the deeper dives we can do on them. The more options that we have, and that's so that cone that Chris mentioned, we can tighten it more with fewer options. And so, am I saying we want 1? No. Am I saying we want 7? No. I think we'd like 3. I think 3 to 5 is legitimate. So, and I'm not telling you can't put it through. I'm just telling you that that's typical for this process, is to get down to that number.
and Chris Monaco, we did eliminate some last meeting, too, so we've already gone down some. So, you
You're
know,
doing the work.
it's kind of interesting, we have so many choices, which can complicate things, I think, because we're all just kind of
Can I
looking at this,
just
and it
make
gets
a
a little
point?
overwhelming. Yes.
You can go ahead, and my
Go ahead,
question's
and then
totally
I'll go
unrelated,
to-
so.
I just wanted to make the point that I'm willing to go along with eliminating any of these that would require the you know, extra space, et cetera, as long as we're not leaving this building untouched and moving on. That, to me, is, I would reconsider a reno rather than leave this building and tell the town,
To rot.
okay, it's yours, let it rot. Yeah, no, I'm not.
So
I'm
maybe
not
you
gonna
can
vote
say
for that.
rot or not rot. I mean,
However
as
you
you're
wanna
going
say
through
it.
it, to
make a new
clarify
column.
that for
This building, in whatever plan I'm going to support, this building has to be included.
Gotcha.
Okay, and then Megan,
Just out of curiosity, how many parking spaces would be under the field?
we asked that already.
Yeah,
Oh, I missed that.
I can't tell you the exact number right now. I think
A lot.
it would be,
That's an answer
it's
I like.
it's probably comparable to the student lot-ish.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah.
Put a hockey rink under there.
Swimming pool?
Swimming pool, hockey rink.
Now we're talking.
Hockey rink, though, I think that would,
All right, so R1?
okay, let's go, yes. And now we're just adding costs, so.
Okay, so do you want me to lead you through this?
Just
Okay.
give like a little overview, I mean, even though we're reading it, just kind of a quick overview, just so that people online who aren't maybe not looking at all this, or just to kind of get a concept in our head.
Please use the correct trigger words.
Yes.
Most expensive option.
Okay, so we're going to start at the top of the spreadsheet. It's R1. You may also see that as AR1. It's the first on the options at a glance page.
Wait, R1
I'm
or
sorry, R1. Sorry, R1. We're on R1. R1 is just a straight renovation of this building. That's, what you have modified, made new.
So we're just looking for someone to say, I
And
want to move this forward?
it requires modulars. I'm just going to go all the way across the line. Requires modulars, probably at least 3 years of construction. And your range of construction is 300 to 363 million, which is at the high end of all of your options.
So could I just say, can we have an agreement, so that I don't have to take a roll on every single one of these, is that speak up if, like, for example, I think this one might be one we don't want to have move forward. So if you're online and you feel strongly that you want this one to move forward, speak up. But I think the ones that are obvious, I don't want to take a roll call vote if I think we're all in agreement. So
Yes, ma'am.
option one, or R1,
R1.
yeah. Anyone online or in this room want to keep this? Say yes, raise your hand. Otherwise, let's eliminate it. All right.
Okay, so
right,
we're going to
you're
put a
going too
no,
slow.
a no by R1.
In X, you said.
You said
Okay,
X.
X. It's an X.
Marks is fine.
AR1 is a renovation and addition to the building. It does not require swing space because we can build the addition next to this building while students are in it,
Where?
and then where it shows off to the side. So that's,
So in the front loop.
the addition, Terry, do you want to bring that up?
I am.
The addition is,
I need streets, so,
the addition is out towards the front circle right
There's
now.
a drop
Okay.
off,
Where,
yeah, with
where,
the Park
yeah.
this
circle.
is AR1.
This is AR1, and then it keeps the top end of the building for non-ed space, but then demolishes everything in between it. Instead of putting the field there, we're adding a little bit of new space and then renovating the gyms. That process would be about at least 36 months.
You're showing 2.
Yeah, you're
There.
showing two.
Oh, sorry.
That's
Yeah, so
Terry.
that's the difference between 2 and 1 is that 2 keeps the upper end. So that's, so 1 does not include non-ed space, non-high school space. We'll get there along here. So, and does not need swing space, roughly about 36 months. But this would be a high school only building. No non-ed space in it.
So you'd wipe out BCAT and all of the other things.
Are we going to move the students?
That's AR1, but AR2 does include them.
AR2 has that option if you want to,
We're
if
on
that's the difference between AR1
We're on
and AR2.
AR1 right now, correct.
Okay, and the addition would be in the circle in the front?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So Everyone got a good brain concept of what it looks like, Chris?
What type of a field are we talking about adding? Is this going to be like
Just grass.
It's basically a grass field that you can use for like play or non-organized sports, but it's not like a full-on adding of a soccer field or something like that. And I would venture to guess you'd probably have us try to squeeze more parking in there at the end of this project. So,
All right. Any more questions on this one? So again, let's speak up if we want to say yes to this.
I have this process is very logical, but I can't really identify what the difference is between AR1 and AR2 and AR8 yet.
Okay.
I agree.
And so
Can I help?
Can I, well, but could we...
AR2 is a better version of AR1, is my understanding.
Okay.
Because we're
I mean,
including
yeah.
Stuff.
And it's
we're
not that
including
much.
those.
All right, so if it's simple, because the other thing is, could we do one round and then go back and say, let's look at AR1, 2, and whatever?
I just
So-
read AR1 and
So
keep two.
if it's simple, go ahead, Terry.
difference
I mean,
between-
through the chair.
Yes.
Between AR1 and AR2, so if you look at AR1 here, you see there's a field, there's all this gray area,
Yep,
right?
so all
That is all currently existing building that's going to get demolished.
Right.
AR2, you see this existing building?
Yep.
This is what we're sitting in right now.
Right.
This stays here.
Yep.
So this is all of the non-educational programming.
so let me make it,
And that gets renovated?
yeah, let me try to make it this maybe a little bit easier, because you can compare, again, the cost numbers are for comparison's sake between options. The conversation here, maybe we'll take similar, now that we're getting into a rhythm here, let's take AR1 and AR2 because they're similar strategies with a similar result. The only big difference is AR2 has the non-high school space built into it, dealing with the historic leftovers of this building, while giving you the new high school across the promenade from it. That's the big difference between AR2 does that, AR1 does not. AR1 just gives you high school.
Okay.
And so you may say between AR1 and AR2, we like AR2 better, or we like AR1 better. That's your call, and then you could decide the other one needs to go.
And then back to I think a question, I think Martha or someone asked, but you upgrade the heat and all the other stuff on
In what's left over.
What's
Yep.
left.
Yep.
That's not, I mean, it's getting renovated, but you're staying the same, right?
But
Yeah.
AR2 says separate building.
It is.
It is. Those are two separate buildings.
But it's non-high school stuff.
Right. So that is where we are now. That remains.
Okay, so can somebody show me on the orientation, like, where am I?
All the same, cafeteria?
Show me where I am right now.
Right there.
Okay.
Every single one is facing the same direction.
So you're building in front in the circle, and then after it's built, you move in and you wipe out the middle.
Yep.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So I wonder, is this committee in agreement, or about being committed to having non-high school ed programming? Because that additional stuff is about $54 million. Is that what there's consensus about? Because I don't know. Some people are nodding yes, but I don't think we've had that discussion. And that's an additional $54 million. Where would it go if we didn't include it? I don't know. But to me, it seems like that discussion hasn't been had. And so while it may look like there's consensus, I think there is doubt among some of us here about, shouldn't we be discussing this?
Right. Well, we did a little bit discuss, I think, whether we were, the desire, I think, for, if I'm speaking out of line, but those programs have been very tied into the students and their learning, even though they're not, I don't want to call them non-educational, because you look at the interaction between the students in, say, a BCAT, or the students in some of the other programs that are here, it's very beneficial for them and they learn from it. It's like having an internship sort of situation. So I think that feel it'd be nice to keep that, and it's part of the community. I mean, it pulls people in. You have, all kinds of volunteers who come in, people like you who go to BCAT and, have their shows and do things like this. So it's tied into the community, and I think we're all trying to keep it a part of the community. Go ahead, Eric.
Hi, Catherine.
He's probably more eloquent at saying things than I am.
No, I'm not going to be eloquent at all, but that's certainly a conversation that we can have. But I
Right.
guess I'm looking at AR1 and AR2, and Terry, just to make sure I'm thinking about this correctly, essentially...
Man without a country.
Man without a country, AR2, AR1 and AR2 gets us only a certain percentage of actually new building. So, right, new construction, new building.
Yep.
The rest of it is going to look like it looks now, and we're going to have a football stadium, again, without bathrooms. So, for about the same price. So why would we even consider AR1 and AR2 when we have 5A and 5B, or the bottom row here, I get all the numbers wrong, which is roughly about the same cost, new football stadium, and all new construction.
Fair. Point made.
Yes, point made, yeah. Go ahead. Did you have something you wanted to add, Melissa?
No, I was going to say, I'm happy to eliminate 1 and 2 now.
Can I just comment?
Yes, Bob.
No, Bob has one.
Then,
So,
all right.
Spider-Man.
I'll go with Bob first, and then Gail.
My only comment would be is even with the new construction and a new field, you would still have a renovation of the existing non-educational building and the sports complex down below. So AR2, I believe, still has an addition and a renovation. So I would be interested in maybe leaving AR2, eliminating AR1, and then still considering a field option as well.
A field option.
Yeah, so building a high school on the field, because then we would come back and take apart this building and have 2 separate buildings. So that's not building a new administrative wing.
All new academics.
Correct, but it's still an addition renovation. New building on one side of it, and then addition renovation on, well, new building on one side and a renovation on the other side of it.
I'm not following.
You're not following it? So if we build on the high school, we would have a whole new building over here. And then if we said we love the concept of building a field, we would still keep the administrative wing here and renovate that, knock down the library in the middle, build a new field, and then go down to the gym and do a renovation. So this part of the building would stay, that part of the building would stay.
That's what NC 4.5
No, but
are.
when Eric said, why would we consider AR2? Because we would have all new, we would only have renovation, right? So, and then some new building.
I think he meant for the high school. Like, the actual high school component of it is new.
Yeah.
The AR components, it's like you're putting new classrooms, and then you're mixing that with renovated auditorium and renovated bits down here that you have to use for, so I don't know how you want to.
Wait, I'm going to let Gail go.
No, I didn't
Okay,
have.
and Chris had his hand up first, and I'll go to you, Chris.
So through the chair, so I guess my question is with ad reno versus new build, because I think all of us jumped to the total cost too. We're talking about 50 years, but with ad reno, is the quality going to be the same for the life of the building versus brand new? You know, as we're starting to kind of, I think, get some consensus here, but, or are there going to be more concerns that would come up with ad reno versus the new?
I would say you should expect that should not be a question for you. If we're charged with delivering you a 50-year building, we'll deliver that whether it's ad reno or new. I'll throw in a freebie that there are things within an ad reno that we can't see right now that you might run into that we'll have to deal with to get you the 50 years.
Yep.
Right.
That's a real potential, so.
I was going to say, things you might bump into that you don't expect that would add cost, which happens when you renovate a home or anything, you know, it's like.
You have
gee, I didn't know
contingencies
that.
for it, but I'm just highlighting it that those are pain steps along the way. Anybody who's done a renovation finds, we just did one in Martha's Vineyard, and the roof wasn't even attached to the building. So.
I just want to add too that we did the ad reno at Marshall Simons, and now we're still paying like 10 years later for new bathrooms and things like that. So that's a concern.
Good point. And then Chris?
In AR2, a lot of these I'm just figuring out because I finally know where I am. What I'm looking at in the beige color up there is all new, is that correct?
No.
Okay, how much of it is new and how much of it is not new?
Terry, can you go to the,
They've got like,
just go back one, or forward one page.
The AR1
This?
here.
Yep, that's AR2. The area in the red box is Reno. Everything forward of that, in sort of the library zone, the middle of the building, is new, and then the yellow on the bottom is renovation.
Okay, so how much of the existing building that's renovated is used by the high school students? Or
Hang on.
daily use?
So the stats on this would be, high school reno is 84,500 square feet roughly. Am I on the right one?
I have 89, but
89,000. And then the high school is, the new high school component is 144, and then the non-high school reno is the 62.
All right, so the part above the red line is the non-high school use?
This is non-high school.
That's non-high school. Oh, all right, I'm upside down again.
This is all new, this is reno.
And what is it, the reno is just the gyms and the auditorium?
What's here now?
no.
Right, but I mean.
Actually, the auditorium's new in this case.
But it's in the same place.
It's on this.
The auditorium's here.
So what is the pink block?
Service entry, so this
Jim,
That, yes.
Gyms.
so
All right, okay, I got it.
I do want to go back to the point that Eric, I think, was trying to make. If you look at AR2 and compare it to N5A, look at the price. It's so similar. So why would we want a reno when we can have a new building for almost the same price?
that's what I think you.
So why, that's the point I think Eric was trying to make. Why would we even want to keep that in there if we can get a new building for the same price?
Well, that's a good question, but I think we should eliminate AR1 and for the time being, leave AR2 for further consideration, even though Eric wants to take it out.
Don't want anything.
I think there might be more than
you
one
sure?
person than Eric that might want to take that out. But we can, we can, so why don't we go ahead and let's talk about AR1 first. I
Take it out.
think that unless anyone online speaks up, we're taking that out. All right. AR1's out. All right, AR2, we already know someone has spoken up. Ow, I've got a cramp. And we'd like to,
Before we do that, so AR2, I'd like to put AR2 in the context of AR8 as well.
okay. Oh, that's what you were trying to get clarification on, right, Melissa?
Okay.
Right, Chris? Because both of them effectively keep all of, well, not all. AR2 keeps these existing buildings, and that's why you end up with 62,000 square feet. It's because that's what's here, right? So if you then go down to AR8, right, there's quite a bit of substantial new build in this option, right? But it has considerably less swing space, non-ed space. So, and then from a price perspective, right? AR8 is 247 to 299, AR2 is 285 to 345. So we could put both, I'm just trying to highlight that they're kind of similar options with different configurations and there's different amounts of space. And if you're more comfortable with AR2 and AR8 seems, it's cheaper, but it comes with less space.
Which goes back to kind of the conversation we had with Mimi, because if you're having less of the non-high school space, who's getting kicked out? And we haven't had that discussion yet. So it's hard to eliminate that when we haven't decided on that yet. So I'm not sure. Martha?
So if we're going to have more, that we might have more than one round of this, so maybe, we've heard somebody wants to keep AR2, so maybe we should keep going.
Right, that's what I'm saying, I agree.
Okay.
Let's keep going, that's what I was, but I think there were people, Martha, who wanted to try and compare AR2 to AR8 and understand the difference between the two as we move forward. That's why I think Terry wanted to speak up on that. So we will leave AR2 in for now, and let's move on to AR3, and I think I'm going to go AR3, and I think we already, unless anyone speaks up, we already agreed we want to eliminate that, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Take out 7 also.
AR7, I think we also had a motion and a second to get rid of it. Speak up online, anyone?
The modulars are out.
All right, it's gone. AR8,
7.
and you talk about that a little bit, Chris, and then,
Yeah, so AR8 was a different strategy for building the addition, and it got more, it's,
So it's this one.
so it's similar to AR2, but it's eliminating some of the space for the non-school.
the non-high school
And does it
component.
have-
Yeah, and the shape of the addition is different, which allows us to put non-ed space, non-high school space in one of the floors.
Can we see the picture of it and
It's
tell
right
me?
there, it's right there.
These two go together?
No, yeah, that one.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Terry, I think she wants to see the
This is
site plan.
AR8.
Yeah, all right, now,
Like a Star Wars.
again, where are we right now? Are we in the back by that
Same
square?
place.
Same
all the
place.
same orientation.
We're always right at.
All right, so what happens to that rectangle
And this will come out. And
that we're in right now?
Smallish.
It's gone. That's just
Gone.
field and parking and roads.
Okay, and then that's all, how do you do that with kids in the building?
You build, so Terry, can you go to the next page? You build the addition, everything to the right in that sort of triangle shape.
Got it?
You build all of that first, and then you can move the kids in, and the non-ed, non-high school space in, and then you take care of it's the build and flip option.
Okay, got it. it out.
Anybody? Okay. So AR8, anyone have any more questions online or in this room on AR8?
So
Martha.
if we're keeping AR2, I'd like to keep AR8, because those
Okay.
are two good ones to compare. I'm not inclined in that direction, but if we were going to go with an ad reno, I would want to have those two to look at.
Okay, we'll leave that one open. Okay.
It's not a field, that's just
So let's go to AR9, which is across the street, correct?
Correct. AR9's the acquisition of the other property and then developing that for your
I would
high
like to
school.
see that further.
I think, everyone in agreement?
Yes.
We're going to keep that one, okay?
Does that include the field and the cost?
That's when they moved the stadium.
It does, I don't know if that came through.
No,
It doesn't touch the field.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
It has a field. The
Okay,
stadium
does it
stays.
include this building and the
Oh, that was a question I,
No.
so could we,
Probably, but
one of my questions with having this building across the street and the fact that people complain already about the bathroom situation with the high school right here, are we able to add the cost of putting bathrooms near the field as part of this cost if we move forward? Because I honestly, I just, if we're going to do something, we need to do it right. And I don't want to, if we're across the street, now what are we going to, and then we take down part of this building or whatever we do, it doesn't make sense to leave our community high and dry, right? Chris?
And my concern about what happens to this building is evidently not built into that cost.
Hold on, I just want to double check one of the data points here.
Check if there's some demo associated with it.
I did include it, I just want to make sure that I don't misspeak, because I think the way I wanted to handle it was like,
Yeah, like what did you
to give
include?
like an allowance for dealing with this building, but not, we don't have it identified exactly what we wanted to do, but I just want to make sure.
I don't think there's an allowance for dealing with this, but that's what I was going to suggest, is that we would add an allowance, call it $20 million,
for now.
$1 million isn't going to do much to this building.
It's going to demolish a lot of it, and it's going to repurpose a portion of it. And that's just, we'd have to explore that.
I just had a suggestion to jump off of Catherine's suggestion is if we do this across the street and beef up what we have at the football field, maybe like field house, band storage.
Right, band storage, so they're not schlepping their stuff.
That's the argument.
That's
is
the
that,
big
like,
thing.
dragging drums down the hill. So, but we can explore this more, but just to give you spitballing, if we're exploring, like, maybe still keep this central office bit and a beefed up, because if once we have the space over there, like adding to that field house, especially if it's a shorter shot, and we build some sort of bridge almost directly there, adding to where the field is, might make sense. But that's
Sure.
for you to.
Yeah, and I think that we can have very like, the options that remain, we'll probably have whole meetings on just like that option to like drill down into these ideas. But for now, you're saying keep that as a concept because it's interesting to all of us, but there's some
We just want to know
hurdles we
where
have to get over. Yeah.
what we're thinking. If it is across the street, there's a lot of other stuff we've been thinking about to make sure that we accommodate
Yep, sure.
our concerns. And I'm going to go with Chris and then Chris.
Yeah, so I just want to kind of remake that point that if we looked at the cost of doing the building across the street, are we including the cost of a bridge over Route 3A and, you know, and how high it has to be to let trucks get under it? And are we including what we do to this building because we don't want to leave it behind as is? I think you need to, in that option, which certainly is a possibility, but I think there are a lot of costs that haven't been addressed in that option.
And I think as we move through PSR, we can identify those, and then in the estimate at the end of PSR, you'll see those come forward, and it'll be more than it is now, but you'll at least be able to equalize it to the concerns that you have relative to that option.
And Chris.
So with this AR9, so I really do like this option. And if we're considering the demolition of this building, should we then be considering a better varsity field and make the current varsity field the JV field? And again, if we're recreating this as we go, you know, we're going to have space open. We're going to have to add bathrooms. We have facilities here. Is there a way to both improve and cut at the same time? We need fields in this town.
Let me just propose something you could decide in the PSR process of this option is you could say, we want to do that across the street, but then you want to do this stadium option that we showed before where you don't need this whole building, but we need some of it. And so let's do that, and we already have the cost data for it, so let's add that to AR9 and keep developing that way, and then you have two fields. That's all part of the PSR conversation. So I think there's consensus on keep this.
Keep this one. Let's go to the next one then, since, again, you now know kind of what we want to maybe add and whatever. So we've got the juices going here. N1.
N1 is the building that tries to put just the high school component in the building, but a complete high school component, where it's a one building. I like that term better. It's a one building option where, in terms of high school, where you're dealing with just move the high school out of here, and then we haven't given consideration for really what to do with this existing building in this pricing and option, just assuming it becomes a town asset, and we deal with that later. So that's a flaw in the thinking of this process, but as it sits right now, that's a full new high school building, separated on its own on the student parking lot.
I'd like to keep that one, but I'd also like to incorporate cost so that we're fair across the board.
But it's a loss of the student parking, so did you look at that?
Yeah, no, loss of the student parking, but then we'll find another spot, but it's going to come out of this building, no doubt.
No, but where's the student parking going to be? That's during construction, you lose the parking, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
So that's no parking for,
I know.
36 months.
Yes.
So,
I just want to be able to consider it.
Okay,
so you want to leave that one in?
check, move on.
Okay.
I know.
N2?
This is round one, right? So just-
What?
This is round one, so just.
N2 is different from N1 in the sense that it only puts core classroom space into the new build, and it relies on this existing building for everything from music to athletics and the like. So like the specialty type programs, not the, main core academic stuff. So this is a smaller building, smaller new, but is a two-building option for high school component.
With one of those two buildings not being renovated, right? The original one.
I think we did include some reno in this.
It's in.
I think I need to look at it, too.
You just scroll up. Yeah, this one,
Still trying to answer Mimi's question.
Sorry.
Yeah.
yeah, this one does not include full-scale demolition, but does include numbers for like abatement. And so the thing with abatement is when you chase it, you end up getting minor renovations, but not full out, so.
Well, actually, I'm going to take Martha first, then Chris, and then Dr. Conti.
So I just want to clarify, so NC1 includes a gym, an auditorium, and everything that the high school would use. NC2 does not.
Correct.
Okay, and there was a concern about how long the building gets on NC1, but the fact is that if kids are walking back over to the old gym and the old auditorium, it certainly is far, and probably farther.
It's less than the length of this building, so,
Yes.
from end to end.
Either way, so I don't think that's an issue, and I like the one better than the two, because then it's a high school with all of their
Yep.
things, so.
And is it Eric who's next, or Chris? Eric, you can go.
No, again, N2 instructionally would be a problem, and would be like permanent modulars from my perspective.
Yep.
So,
N2 or N1?
you all can study it. I just,
And you're saying N2 would be,
N2 is,
Yeah.
not even.
It's less expensive, though.
But then you have to do something with this building, Chris, so then you end up spending the same amount of
I agree.
money with less parking. We have a problem with parking now, and there's still no bathrooms at Varsity Field. So, for $300 million, I'm gonna get bathrooms at Varsity Field. No matter where we put Varsity Field, we're gonna have
that's right. So,
Second that.
So N2, do we want to keep or eliminate?
X.
X. Out, okay.
So we're keeping N1?
N1 we're keeping.
All right.
All right. Let's go to N4. Chris?
N4 and N5, I'm going to make this easier for you.
Okay.
I don't think you should pick between N4 and N5 now and just decide if you like the idea of a building on Varsity Field and this becomes the stadium thing that we told you. And if you like that as a notion, we can wrestle the difference between 4 and 5 down the road.
Definitely, yes. Yep.
Small point.
Billy wants to say
Chris,
something.
wait. Oh, yes, hi.
I'm sorry to say anything. Cliff, you seem like a genius compared to what I'm experiencing.
I know the feeling, Billy.
But as I was looking at this and copying off Eric's paper, when I saw the one where he told me where Sunset Drive was and where the playing field was, the one thing that crossed my mind is if I didn't say this, my neighbors would never help me out again, is I suspect that the people that live at the end of Sunset Drive may not want to have the field that close to their houses. You know, when it's where it is now, we walk there, people park, that works out fine, but I'm not sure whether they would like the noise that comes with it, not just for the Burlington things, but very often there are, other towns that have to borrow the field and that kind of thing, and that would be right next to a number of houses that are right next to that. So just
Thanks for bringing that, that's a
Have to look at a
consideration.
buffer of
Yeah.
some sort.
Yeah, there might be some sort of buffer. You know how you put the walls up on highways? That gets
Right,
expensive
it's
too,
just
but
one thing not
something
to
to
overlook.
consider, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. Yep. Chris?
Just a very small point, while I like these, I don't know if we want to put a preschool on the second floor. Usually better on a first floor, but just a technical thing.
Yeah, are you talking about NC, or?
NC4.
NC4, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Just technical.
Second. So you made your comment, and we're good? Chris, you heard that, right? Good? All right, Martha?
And since Millie brought it up, I did want to bring up tonight that we're not at that stage, but I think it's really important that we have a lot of communication with neighbors, because there's Sunset Drive and there's also Arlington Road, and the noise and the construction, and even regardless of the end result, are going to impact, those neighbors, and they're going to feel strongly about it. And I think that we need to be sure that we're addressing those issues as we get closer to making a final decision, and then, of course, as we go forward with construction.
Yep. Agreed. So, again, we're keeping in 4 and 5, and then, so now we have one left to talk about. And 5B.
It's the same.
No, they're all the same. Lump them all together.
They're all together? Okay, then we're good.
On the football field.
Yeah. We're done?
You're good.
So have we gotten it down to?
Eliminate 5.
I think you got it to 5 if you
2, 3,
include the
4.
football field ones.
5 if you count.
5 we can count as 1, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're down to a reasonable number now?
But to 5 the way Terry does math.
Pardon me?
Motion?
Yeah, so,
Do you want me to make a motion?
Before you make,
well, I want to read which ones we're keeping first. We're keeping AR2, we're keeping AR8, we're keeping N1.
AR9.
You're 9.
Yes, AR9, I already checked, right, and then we're keeping N1, and then all the N2, the 4, 5, and A and B, we're keeping as one group together as one. Does everyone agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, so let's make a motion and second.
I move that we advance only AR2, AR8, AR9, N1, and N4/5 as a single option.
Second.
Any more discussion? All right. Everybody online, listen up, I'm taking a vote. Okay, Chris Monaco?
Yes.
Megan Wojcik?
Yes.
Melissa Massardo?
Aye.
Dr. Conti? Yes. Lisa Chen? Dr. Chen?
Yes.
Joe Adubato?
Yes.
Mimi? Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Nicole Kasha?
Yes.
Bob Kuna?
Yes.
Neil?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Tom? Tom Regan? I'll go back to Tom. Martha Simon?
Yes.
Mark Sullivan?
Yes.
The chair is a yes. And Tom Regan, are you there?
Is Roger Riggs
All right.
is online now? I don't know if he was before. Did you?
He was earlier.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yep.
He's not on the committee.
He's not on, okay.
No, he's still lit up. He's just not answering.
Yeah, he's just.
He's not on the committee.
No.
Oh, Tom Regan, yeah.
No, he's on my list.
No, I meant
So
Roger.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 0.
Okay, great work. You guys are doing, it's a lot of hard lifting, it's a lot of work, and we'll start drilling in on the PSR stuff and getting you there. The last thing on our update was the community presentation, which is scheduled for November 20th at 6:30 p.m. in the high school auditorium. That will be a great time for folks to come out and hear more about this process that we just went through to get to PDP, and then also I think we're going to do some tours of the building so people can see what what is currently here if they haven't been here in a while. So I think it's going to be a good night for folks to come out and ask their questions and show up and get sort of caught up to speed on where we're at. And so that flyer should be out and about, and we hope to see a lot of people there. So.
What are the other ways that we're communicating as well, Terry?
Yeah,
I know we
so
talked about-
two immediately come to mind. One will be through the buzz,
Yep.
so we'll get in touch with Nikki. And two, Eric, if we can send something out through the school. Those are the two immediate ways that I know of. And then I can certainly send you this particular, maybe I can make I'm technically illiterate, but some sort of screenshot that folks can put on their InstaFace, Snapchat.
Yeah, well,
all
yeah,
that
something on
stuff.
Facebook
we
on
get
the resident pages.
Not just the Parent Square, the reverse 911.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, and then I think we should get something on the residents pages that you post this on Facebook as well. Or some of the ways we were talking about it and any other. Yes, B News, of course. Yeah, we talked about B News as well.
And you can send it to
BCAT. You
Marge.
said you were gonna reach out to
Marge can
BCAT.
put it in the senior center newsletter.
Yep.
Okay. So those are the ways we're going to do that, and effectively, as Chris outlined, we'll introduce the team. If SBC members want to be on stage, that's great. I think presence would be helpful. I don't think the entire SBC needs to be there, so, but I'm not going to.
Well, we should
don't.
try to attend, but maybe we don't
Absolutely.
need to be on stage, I think is what he was saying.
So we'll introduce the team. We'll have a slide that talks about the concept. We're going to show, there's a video that we've put together on the existing conditions of the building, which is like 6-7 minutes long. And then we're going to say, and if you didn't believe us, come on for a walk. And sometimes that's the best way to demonstrate the condition of the building, is for people to put eyes on it. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was just going to suggest, as one of the clueless people looking at these things tonight, that at that presentation, which needs to be well publicized because this is so complicated and we have so little media coverage, of any kind, but that for me, what I found would help to have on the illustrations here, if on all of them it showed where Cambridge Street was and where Sunset Drive was and where Valley Circle was, because just when I'd think I'd have it, I'd have to look over it, ask my partner here again, where are we? Because a little shift and you're totally lost.
Right, so we're going to,
Kind of markers would make the old and the new far clearer.
Yeah, it's really hard to orient yourself on these pictures.
But I have to say, hats off to you. If we knew how much work you did, we would not encourage anyone to ever run for school committee. We just, sort of hold you hostage, and you'd have to be school committee members forever.
Thank you.
so, and it may have been lost in translation, but I know Chris is going to put something on each of the options that orientates people to where they are.
Right. But the streets, I think, she was saying add the streets somehow or show that would be helpful. And again, I even think that kind of what Bob did, we were presenting, the across the street, because it is hard to visual. Again, when you initially told me across the street, I was thinking across from the entrance, not across from the high school, because you can't really see it. So it's just everyone has a different way of
The access is tough.
conceptualizing things and seeing things, and it's like some people are more visual, some people read books and learn better from that. It's just just make sure we hit everybody so that everyone gets a good concept and understanding. And there will be more public meetings too. This won't be the only one. There's going to be a lot more communication with the public as we keep moving forward, and making sure that people from town meeting, hear about all of this, as much as possible as we're moving along. So, Eric.
I thank you for being so helpful tonight. I really appreciate it, because I didn't realize how far behind I was on this, because I've really never had anything that I could look at before.
Thanks for participating. I mean, I wish more people would come, so, yes.
So just to finish the schedule of events. We'll do that tour. What we will then do is we're going to show some of the options up on the screen to tell people this is what we're considering. We'll also have a slide with an outline of basically schedule next steps for the next, call it 9 months, as we go through PSR and where we want to end up. And we'll take questions as folks have them. And so I'm hoping that it's going to be well attended.
And again, reminding people that we do have the building website, and you can post questions there.
Yep.
You can look, up every meeting we've had, look at the minutes, look at, watch them. BCAT has them, so, please, if you've missed anything or feel like you've missed anything, you can, like I said, go back to the bhsbuildingproject.com and again, put questions on there that we try to answer. We post the next meetings. We do put information there that are, it's at your fingertips if you've missed anything. So I just want to reiterate that too.
Bob, will you put that slide back for a second?
Yes.
It's Terry.
Oh, it's Terry? Okay, thanks, Terry.
Oh, Terry has a slide, okay.
I have the power right now.
You want to take a picture of that?
I want to get the details so I can post it.
Oh, yeah, well, we can get a flyer to you to post.
That's all right, I got a picture. I'm all set.
All right, whatever.
You mentioned a tour of Penn Corporate. Is that something that you want?
Yes.
Terry to work on?
I think we should set up a tour so people in this group can tour it and others, I guess, if they want. But, I mean, I think this group in particular should have the opportunity to look at it since we're making an important decision.
Right. So I'm going to reach out to the owner and look to schedule that, and we'll come back. It will be during the day. That's the expectation. But I'll let the team know. And in addition to that, we've spoken a little bit to town council about issuing a potential request for information. I want to see, if we can get that meeting done quickly, we'll probably take that next step as well. And we'll see whether or not that's a viable option. And if it is, my recommendation would be to bring somebody on board who can advise that's in that space from a commercial real estate perspective. And I will have a list of firms, because that would be an RFS or an RFQ.
RFI firms.
And get somebody on board. But that's down the road, but,
Just a piece of advice when we're doing this is that when we go to town meeting and have multiple different parts of this, it gets very difficult. So if we have to do a land acquisition first and then as tight of together is, and again, I'm wondering if there's going to have to be a zoning change. So there's all those layers that then get very tricky when we're going to town meeting and can easily pull something apart if it's not all tied in a bow.
Yep.
So
It's true.
There's definitely meat on this bone that needs to be chewed off, and there's a lot of things when you get into procuring commercial real estate, potentially putting a new school in it, getting a town to go down that path. It will be it's a great challenge. It's super interesting. And I think we're looking forward to pursuing that option as part of this process, so.
All right, any more questions or comments? All right, so, Martha.
I was sort of waiting for other topics, but it's sort of related. So we had sort of 5 proposals to do this, and we're talking deep dive. And yet, I think there's still some big questions that, as a group, we need to decide. And maybe, Eric said it very well, do we want to renovate and add, the AR options? Do we want to do that if we could have a new building? And then we don't have to spend however many hours of TAPE's time doing a deep dive on A2 and A8, for example. And that when you do the deep dive to, the end, comparing the, we talked about combining N4 and 5 and A and B and that kind of thing. So I'd like us to think about the big issues like that, and I don't want to take anything off the table too soon, but I also want us to be really thinking, are we really preferring that, and maybe we can't decide yet if we want anything else off the table because of cost or because of neighbors or because of other issues. I mean, there's all kinds of things. But I want to encourage people, I don't know if there's an in-between stage. I guess, so I have a question. We're not with MSBA, so we don't have to commit to doing a deep dive on everything we decided on tonight. So is there some way that we can simplify it or reduce, shave some things off? So, because having conversations. I don't know if there is a way to do it, but I wanted to propose that.
Well, I mean, you can answer that question, but the other thing too, and it goes back to, what Mimi brought up is, we maybe should have a more in-depth conversation about, the non-educational stuff, and keeping it and making sure that we've, I know, again, we've touched on it, but I think maybe we add that to an agenda and get into a deeper dive on that, and maybe that's when we address what you're talking about, Martha, because I think this is our good first pass, and again, Chris, if you think it's more, if it's better to try and eliminate more now and get it over with tonight instead of, we don't want to, I guess what Martha's trying to say, we don't want to consume a lot of your time if we can eliminate something more this evening. Does that help you, I guess, is the question.
Yeah,
can he answer, and then,
yeah. My sense is if you've done enough hard work tonight to get us started on PSR, the kinds of things we dive deep on are floor plan arrangements, but it's more questions like that, like what exactly do we want in this building? What are the HVAC systems? We're going to have someone come in and talk to you about HVAC systems and like get into how far are we going on sustainability? Like those kinds of things start getting layered in on PSR.
Okay.
So it's not just about program as much as it is a whole bunch of things. And at any point you could say, that makes this option a deal breaker and we can take it off the table.
Okay, all right.
You don't have to wait till the end of PSR to make that decision, so.
All right, good. And then Chris, and then Chris.
Yeah, so one of the things that is driving me when I look at these options and say, take it off, don't take it off, is my concern about it being our responsibility to deal with this building. That, to me, is, as good citizens, we need to take care of this building one way or another, whether we add to it or whether we take the middle out of it and put a football field in it or whatever we do. I think that's our responsibility as part of this, including the cost in any option. The other thing that crosses my mind is that, I'm not really like you, Martha. I'm not interested in a whole deep dive on a whole bunch of things. But is there any chance at any point that MSBA might come on board? Well, I know you don't think so, but I don't completely agree with that. So I don't want to do anything that would eliminate that possibility by taking a shortcut that would leave us out.
I don't think they're watching your process, and I think that when you submit a statement of interest and if they decide to take it and you decide to join, you're going to have to do all of this all over again anyway.
Right.
All of it, completely. So
Well,
there's nothing here
that wasn't our intention, though. Our intention was to run this committee in such a way that it would work for SBA.
But we'd still have to go through the process, no matter what.
Their process requires you to do this module again for them, the entire thing.
Okay.
There's no, we can't hand them something on a platter and say, we went through your process, but we don't want to go through it again.
On the other hand, over the past many years, there have been things that SBA has picked up after the fact for us, reimbursed us for later on.
Is that when it was SBA or when it was MSBA?
Well, maybe it was different.
It's MSBA, but it's getting to be rarer.
Yeah, but it happens. I'm just being careful.
One thing I will add to what Chris has said is I'm not aware, and I don't think anyone is, of a town that has 2 concurrent projects in their program. So while Fox Hill is thankfully moving forward, I think that will preclude the high school from being considered by the MSBA. Do I know that for a fact? No, but I think if you ask most people in the business, they'll agree with me.
Chris?
Through the chair, Eric may not like this. Do you still have the thought exchange license?
Yeah.
Do we want to consider using that and the meeting in order to get some feedback?
It's certainly available for us to use, so we can talk about it.
I mean, I always felt that through the Fox Hill that was very helpful to be able to, like this, we hadn't been considering something like noise and neighbors to that extent now, not letting it, an outside the box idea that we haven't considered come up later on, and at least have the opportunity for input.
Thanks, Chris. Anyone else? Are we ready to move to the next? So other topics not reasonably anticipated. Anyone online? Anyone in the room? All right. Public comment? All right, next meetings, if you can put that up.
We have a next meeting on December 12th, and then I just booked out, as we've done, this second Thursday of each month. And, it is possible that, based on where we're going through PSR, that there may be a need for additional meetings of the SBC. Either in person or remote, and I will certainly speak to the chair and figure that out. It's just we are entering a different phase that may require more attention from the entire group, but I can also tell you that from a working group perspective, there will be considerably more meetings as we, investigate each of the options. I'll take site logistics as an example. If we're building across the street, that meeting will be quick. If we're building as part of this building, it will be longer. So, it's just things like that. So, just to be aware of that. So, but I thought we made great progress today, and those are the dates of the meetings, and then I think
we're just...
Move we adjourn?
Thank you. Is there a second? All right. Just going to say all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you.